Black and white adjustments in Photoshop. Directions: follow along with the video and complete the adjustment layers. Part 1. Getting the image to edit. In order to get the images that you need in order to complete this activity, first, you're going to make sure that you open it in the correct location. For A-Day students, this will be located in your Sub-Day for 424 folder. For B-Day students, this will be located in your Unit 4 Black and White Photography folder. The video that you're viewing is right here on the top. The images are located in this linked folder right here. So if we click on this, this will open up this folder in Google Drive. You are going to take one of these images to edit. Each of these images has been credited to its original photographer as seen by the title there. So find the one that you would like. If this is the one that you are looking at, then you'll select your download button in the top right corner. You can also right-click the image and download it here. Your image will then be located in your Downloads folder on your This PC. Part 2, Adjustment Layer 1, Black and White. Once you've downloaded your image, you need to open that in Photoshop. This is the image that I chose. It is not available for you to edit in that folder. So you will choose a different image to do similar edits on for your activity. If your screen does not look like mine or your Photoshop does not look like mine, remember you can go to Window, Workspace, and reset your essentials. So it will look like this. What I've done to make my life a little easier is I've brought my layers out to the edge here, extending that down, adding it right there. And then I've brought my adjustment layers up a little bit. I just like more space to be able to see what I'm doing here. And also so you're able to see as well. So the first thing that you always are going to do is take your background layer here, right click and duplicate. It's just going to be background copy, select OK. What this does is it saves the original layer here in case something accidentally happens to the one that you're currently editing. You have the original one so you don't have to reopen items. To add your black and white adjustment layer, you're going to come to Adjustments. Please do not use any of these presets. Okay? Yes, they will change your thing black and white, but they will not give you the ability to make the changes that we are going to be doing. Instead, go down to Single Adjustments, Black and White. So once you're in Single Adjustments, there's going to come up with a preset default. But then you can see that you have your reds, yellows, greens, cyans, blues, and magentas. These you can adjust accordingly in order to better accommodate how you would like your image to feel. And you can see that each of these things that I'm adjusting is causing changes to happen within the image. Pay attention to how that makes the image feel and what seems to be popping out to your eyes or receding. And you will make your adjustments based on your image. So my adjustments are here. My black and white layer is here. If you end up questioning what you've done, you can take the little eye off. You can add another black and white layer, adjust differently, And then what you can do is you can actually go back and forth between the two different layers, seeing which one you like more. Remember, the layer that's on top is the one that you're going to see first. The layer that's underneath you'll see second. So this is that top layer. This is that second layer. And you can determine which one you like more. So I like my original one more. So I'm going to take this one and I'm going to drag it down to the trash can and drop it in there. So you can play around until you are happy with the adjustments that you have chosen. Part 3, Curves Adjustment. For part 3, we're going to add a curves layer. So you're going to come back over to your adjustments and you're going to grab this curves, which is the third one down. With curves, this allows you to see your current histogram that's here. It also allows you to take a look at where your shadows start and where your highlights start. The histogram here is essentially telling you where there is information in your photograph. There is so much you can do with it, but we're just going to be very simple with this today. So I'm going to drag this bottom little arrow over to just before where I have information showing. Because over in here, there's no data for our image to look at. The same thing over here. I'm going to bring this all the way over. Notice, if I start getting too far over, I start deleting data that's in my lighter areas. So I want to make sure that I keep this just on the outside. The same thing would happen in our shadow areas on our image if I were to drag this over. We start losing all of that detail in our shadows. So make sure that it's right on the outside of where the data is for your image. Remember, your histogram will look different than mine as we're using different images. From this point, once I've brought in the edges, I can actually create little dots and drag these dots either up or down in order to adjust my image slightly differently. It allows for a little bit better detail in our shadow areas and brighter areas in our highlights without losing that middle area. So this will allow you the ability to adjust a lot of your contrast and brightness. So this is one of those ways that you can adjust black and white in your image. Part 4, Brightness and Contrast and Exposure. So for the next part, part 4, you're either going to create a brightness and contrast adjustment layer or an exposure adjustment layer. So we'll start off with a brightness and contrast. This allows you to really look at your highlights and your shadows and how bright they are. So looking at my shadows, I'm brightening up that highlight across this kiddo's hand. But I'm starting to lose that dark in those shadows. I definitely want more contrast and darker shadows. So I'm going to bring that up a little bit. So I could call that done with just brightness and contrast using that layer. Okay. You can also come in and do exposure and slightly work on your exposure depending on your image. So I need, ooh, goodness, too much. Sliding these around will allow you to better adjust the different areas on your image. When I'm looking at my stuff, I'm typically looking at a dark area, such as the fold right here behind this kiddo's knee. and a highlight, such as the highlight right there on their arm. That allows me to kind of have an overall feeling in the entire image. So with this, I can call that done. And then I can choose to either keep my brightness and contrast here, my exposure, or both, depending on if I like that. For grading, I'll be looking for one or the other, or you can have both. Part 5, dodging and burning. All right, for our final adjustment, we're going to be doing and talking about dodging and burning. Now, technically, Photoshop has a tool that is your dodge and your burn tool. You can see while I have burn selected, the little video that plays shows you that it's darkening a specific little area in the image. Whereas if I have dodge selected and I go over this, you can see that it's lightening an area. So dodging is like blocking, and so it's preventing the light from hitting the image, which is going to allow the image to be lighter. And burning is where you are adding light in order to darken an area. Now, with dodging and burning on your actual image, it will change the pixels that are there. So this is called destructive editing. It destroys the pixels that are there, and you can no longer go back and change this. This is why I'm going to show you an alternative to this tool right here. So what you're going to do is come to Layer, New, Layer. You're going to select on the name, I would type either dodge or burn. Mode is going to be overlay. Overlay, fill with an overlay neutral color, 50% gray. Okay. Now, you need a second one, so I'm going to duplicate this layer, but instead of making it dodge copy, I'm going to call it burn. So this is going to be my burn layer. Now remember, dodge is where we are removing light, so we're making an area lighter. Burn is where we are making an area darker. We are going to be using black and white and our paintbrush tool right here. So with your colors, okay, you want it to be in the top left corner for your white, and you select OK. And then you can select black by dragging it all the way down to that bottom left corner. You can switch back and forth between the two just by using the little arrow tool right here and toggling back and forth. So I'm going to start with white, come up to my paintbrush, and take a look at my paintbrush settings. This top one here is the size of that circle. Okay? When you change the circle, it changes the side. If all you can see is a plus instead of a circle, that means that caps lock is on your computer. Take that off in order to see the circle that you're using. The second and probably most important thing is the hardness of this circle. So when you're at 100% here, that means that you're going to be getting a sharp, crisp edge on the edge of that circle. Whereas if you're down here at like 5 or 10%, it's as if you were spraying a can of spray paint from a foot away from an image. You'll get a dot of paint in the middle, but it misses out from the edge. You want to select something that's softer. You want to select something that's kind of fuzzy around the edges. So I'm going to leave it at about 161 pixels-ish and 10% because I want it to be nice and soft. Okay, your opacity, this is very important. You do not want a high level of opacity. 10 to 15% is perfect. Okay, so remember with dodging, you are going to lighten an area. Now, I really don't have a lot of areas that need to be dodged. but I'm going to show you anyways. So I can come in here and I can lighten an area by painting over top of it. The more you paint, okay, the more layers you do, the lighter an area is going to get. So now we can take that off and you can see how light that area actually gets. Now, I am not a fan of what I just did, so I'm actually going to go back up in my history, which if you don't have your history, click Window, History, okay? And I'm going to go back to my first few. So I'm actually okay here. Any area that needs lightening, you just go through and add that. As opposed to burn, if you come to burn, you can come here, switch it to black, and you can actually come in, same philosophy, and darken up specific areas that need to get darkened on your image. Now, the more you layer over top, the darker the area will be because you're adding 14% on top of 14% or whatever your number that was there. So the more that you add, okay, the more times you go over an area, the darker that area will become. I always suggest slightly touching the corners of your image to darken those edges. Just a smidge in order to help your viewer really focus in on what's important, so the center of the image. Now, this takes a little bit of time to come in and really get that paint where you need it to be and the location that you need. So if we take a look, especially in this top corner, if you pay attention to there as we see it versus not, you can see that it is slightly darker, which is allowing you to kind of focus in on the center. So this is dodging and burning. I should see one of each of these layers on there, and I should see areas that you have dodged and burned. Final step, saving and submitting. For your final step, I would want you to check over in here, making sure that you have the original image here and that you have these layers on top. I should see a black and white layer, a curves layer, either a brightness and contrast or an exposure, and a dodge and a burn layer. When this is done, you're going to go File, Save As, changing the file name to your first and last name, black and white practice. Okay, then adding your class period and day. Make sure that Photoshop file PSD is the way that you are saving this. And make sure you remember where you are saving this to. Downloads or desktop, wherever you choose, as long as it is saved. Once you're done saving, please make sure, always select OK. Please make sure to submit this in the correct location in Schoology. So if you take a look, we have Schoology. Remember, A day will be located in the sub day for the first day that it's available. Unit 4, Photoshop Activity Black and White Adjustments. Right here is where you are going to submit that image. When you are done this, there will be other activities that you're going to be doing underneath. Please continue to work on those. One will be the Together We Shine piece that's in the middle of the table. And then the other activity underneath will be working on editing and submitting your final piece for the Spring Art Show for 2024. Thank you.